Hey guys, I'm Miranda, and today I'll be talking about my time when I worked as a caseworker. So, being a caseworker is basically like being a social worker. However, you don't need to go through the extensive schooling. In most states, you have to have a master's in social work, and you may also have to have other types of training before you can become a social worker. However, as a caseworker, I don't think it's pretty much needed. And I have a degree as well as experience, which helped for me to get my job. So basically, throughout most of my life, I've worked in group homes or helped people, helped children. Um, I've worked in residential treatment facilities. I've worked in group homes. Right now, I'm also doing like some per diem work in a homeless shelter. So that's basically my experience. And when it comes to my education, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Communications. How that happened is that I went to Queensborough Community College and graduated with my associates in business administration. I took some classes in accounting, thought I would be an accountant. This was before the whole Bernie Madoff thing. And then I transferred over to Queens College, thought that I would major in accounting. I did not like it when I took the extra courses. I actually do not like math, so I don't know how that happened, but yeah. So then I transferred and just decided to get my bachelor's in communication. So I had a degree and experience. Um, you can be a caseworker based on your experience as well. However, you would not get paid as much. So for me, I started off with 22 and change. However, if you didn't have a degree, you would make like 14, 15 an hour. How much you get paid also depends on where you work at. So I know of some people, some places where they'll start you off at 35 a year, 35 to 40 a year. I would say 40 to 45 is like the normal range. However, those things differ. I work part-time, so I was working between 18 and 28 hours a week, which worked for me, being that I also had another job. Um, However, I was also at a better agency where they paid me better. And I know for a lot of people that go to school for social work, there's a lot of schooling and it's kind of like a thankless job. You really have to have a passion for it. Um, so yeah. I do know that like if you were to work for the state, the county, or like a school, it's a little better because one, you have your days, you have the security, like the benefits and everything. And I do know some people who work for DSS and they make about 60, 70 a year because it's based on your time. Um, so that's just a little background of the pay. So now back into it. Um, Basically, when I interviewed, I asked them a lot of questions. I seemed very interested about the job. I talked about my time working with children. So most of the time when you work with children in environments like this or even a group home, they want to know like, what was the most stressful thing you had to deal with? How did you help to calm a stressful situation? Things like that. So it always helps. Excuse me, sorry guys. I think I'm just a little under the weather right now. So basically, when you're being interviewed for jobs like this, it would help to have, a story on hand. If it's your first time doing something like that or working in a group home, just talk about a time where you handle a stressful situation. These jobs basically want to know that you're caring, nurturing, and that you have a passion for working with children or people, and to just see where that comes in. So the interview for me was probably like 45 minutes just because, I've also learned that when you're being interviewed to ask questions. So if instead of just going like, yeah, and answering the question and then being out in 10 minutes, it definitely helps to ask questions. about the company, about what's going on, to do your homework about the company before. It does not hurt to Google a company. And also to ask, what would a typical day be like? When you're doing social work, what type of population would I be dealing with? When they say population, it means like how old, what type of people. Are you working with autistic children? Are you working with inner city children that are minorities? Are you working with children in an upper class rural area? These are all things that you want to ask. Are you working with adults instead of children? Are you working with adults with special needs? When they say population, that's basically what they mean. AKA with the demographic, the main focus of the people that you would be working with. So I did the interview. She said I did great. Whenever you work with children, you have to get fingerprinted. Sometimes you have to pay for it. Sometimes the job pays for it. My job paid for it, and then it goes through the state. They want to run everything to make sure you're not like a child molester, or you haven't like abused kids in the past, things like that. During that time, you also have to take a drug test. You have to be clean because you're working with children. I have had jobs where I've worked with adults, in some, shelters, things like that, where I did not have to take a drug test, and I think it was just because I was dealing with adults. So you do have to do that. You have to have a clean driver's license. I know that where I was working, one girl had applied for this job and she didn't get it. One, her license was crap, and I think in the interview they could just see that she kind of like wasn't the person for the job. So, your license has to be clean, or as clean as possible. No suspensions. If you do have a suspension, get that checked out and handled before you go on the interview, because that gives you enough time to, get everything squared away. What else? So fingerprinting, clean license, drug test. Sorry, I feel like there's something else. Oh, and references. They want to know that you're an upstanding person. They'll probably ask for like 3 or 4 references. So whoever, they may say like, oh, well, we calling these people, just give the people who you're asking references for a heads up. All of that basically takes between 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how fast everything goes. After that, you get the job. I got the job offer, and then I began training. You do have some training. You're going to be a mandated reporter, so you have to take like a mandatory like training class for that. A mandated reporter is basically if you see anything wrong or crazy going on with children, it is your obligation and duty to report. And they also say like what time should you do it. Like, if you see a child being abused on a train station, are you obligated to report it or no? Are you working? Are you not working? Things like that. So you'll learn about that. If one of the children you are working with you suspect are being abused, you definitely have to report it. That goes for like school teachers and, doctors. Basically anyone working with children, if you see something going on, that you have to report it. Then you may get like, a training, your little orientation, what the job entails, blah, blah, blah. When I started, I also shadowed, I think like 2 people just to see how their day goes. So as a caseworker, I was responsible for, picking the children up, seeing how their day went, inquiring about them. If there was therapy and the children wanted me to come along, I would come along. If there's family therapy, I would come along. If they had to go to court, or they had appearances, I would go along for that as well. It really depends, and like basically your schedule is flexible, but for the most part, you would try to be working with the children when they got out of school. You really don't want to take away from the schooling. So like I shadowed the people, see how they got along, what they did. You really should kind of like, you have to be able to have good balance and boundaries. The reason why I say that is because people can be manipulative, and they have to know that basically you're not just the adult, but in the way the authority figure. Not that you're a bad person, but that, you're not going to just let everything rock. You can't just buy whatever you want. You're not going to, run me down. And that's very important, because if you don't establish that, then it's just gonna make your job very, very stressful. I've worked in group homes where like the people wanted to be like more like friends, and it was just hard for them to get across to the children. So like their days are always longer because they kind of feel like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. But by not dealing with it, you are making a headache for yourself. So you definitely have to have strong boundaries and be firm in some ways. My days were basically varied. You could work basically any day of the week. I said that I basically would not work weekends. I know some people that did work weekends. I'm not about to be bothered with that on my days. So my days were basically like Monday through Friday, and I had a caseload. A caseload is basically how many people or children you have to see. My caseload was like 5 or 6 children, and it varies. It's not like you're gonna have those 5 or 6 children throughout your whole career, because everyone advances differently. So like say somebody left the company, I may get their children. Some people may only need it for like 6 months. Some people you may work with for 2 years. It depends on the child and what all is going on. You know, if a child were to get in trouble and have to go to jail, you're obviously not going to have that case anymore. Things like that. If you make court appearances, sometimes you would have to write letters like, hey, I think, the child is improving. Whoever is improving, please try to work with them, give them another chance. We have different methods that we want to try with them. And, we would basically like jail or a detention center to be the last resort. So that's kind of like the I guess the brief overview. Also being that the government or your state may pay for this. You also have to write reports. So after seeing every child, I was responsible for making sure that every week my reports were done about my visit with the child. And your job will like tell you like their different codes, like if this was a face-to-face, if this was, a regular outing, like at the mall or something, what happened. And you basically detail like, the time that you spend with the child, because you get paid kind of like by the minute, like every 15 or 30 minutes, things like that. And you also have to be responsible for your mileage. You have to have a car because you are going to pick the children up, drop them off. You have to be responsible for your mileage so you can get reimbursed and things like that. So that also takes into account like how great your company is. Some places may charge like, only 10 or 20 cents for each mile. Some may charge like 98 or very close to what the going rate of gas is. My job at the time charged very closely to what the going rate of gas was. So, I was happy with that. If you have to pay for tolls or anything like that, that gets reimbursed. If you have to buy supplies like, crayons, things like that, that will get reimbursed. I like say like if you have one child, all right, these crayons are going to be just for this child. Things like that, and you get reimbursed based by the child. What else? You also want to document if there's any progress, if what you're doing is helping the children. Now into the deeper part of it. I did not do casework very long because being a social worker, a caseworker is very demanding. It is not just you and the child, it's you, the child, and the parents. And one, if you just think of like when you were growing up, all the emotions you were going through, these children are dealing with a lot of stuff. It's very hard and difficult to deal with. However, I think it was one of my most rewarding jobs because I had a lot of issues with myself growing up, and by dealing with the children, I was forced to deal with my issues. So, I'm telling these children, hey, you need to open up. I can't help you if you don't. Meanwhile, I'm still not opening up about issues that I had. So I do think that the job was worthwhile in that manner. What else? You're gonna have good days and bad days. You may have more bad days than worse because it's a very emotional job. I've had to be in therapy sessions And it almost felt like I was a referee because the mom and the daughter are arguing. And I'm like, listen, daughter, you can't do these things. Mom, you got to talk to your child like better. Very hard. I've been attacked by children where I had to call their parents and be like, listen, you got to go get your kid because they're wilding. And I don't want to have to send their child away in the hospital. So like, for instance, if the child is very unruly and disrespectful, when these children are coming to you because they've already been examined by like the school psychologist, things like that, they've already had like excessive absences and just issues before they get to you. And I know sometimes with children, like if they're very like unruly and in school, that the police have to be called, or like an ambulance would have to be called to take the children away to make sure that they're not dealing with any mental issues. And this can happen with children as young as like 5 and 6 and probably younger. Children normally get diagnosed with serious issues like around 7. But as time goes on, sometimes you'll get diagnosed with things like when you're 12 or 13, 14. Now the way things are, children are getting diagnosed younger with issues. And it's really sad and disheartening that, children are just going through a lot these days. So even I know one girl, like, you're dealing with, how you look, your grades, mom is on you. The parents have had it up to here. And they're kind of like defeated in a way because they've been dealing with these issues for so long. But it's like, you don't want to give up on your children. So I get that. And the children know that they kind of feel like they're not really wanted or are appreciated or respected. So, I mean, there's just so much that goes on. And just think of your family dynamic. I mean, we all have issues in our families, and these things are kind of like being very highlighted. But the thing is, like, these issues have to be dealt with because they're very big, whether the child came out of the home, whether for some reason the child is acting out. And even I would recommend just anyone watching this, if you're an adult, if you're going through stuff, get the help you need. I've had to do that, and it's okay. It does not make you a failure. The best thing that you can do is work on your life. We all make mistakes. We're all growing. We're continuing to grow. Don't feel down on yourself. If you're still alive and you're still here, you still have a chance to make a change and a difference. And, sometimes I've had to, like, get the children out of the house. So, like, there's this one thing where it's, like, an emergency thing where, like, the child has to get out of the house because, like, mom, dad may have had it, the child may have had it, and sort of like a ceasefire, where the child will go into, like, a group home or some area for, like, a couple of weeks and then go back into the home. It does not always mean that, like, mom beat the kid up or something. It's just, we need a break. However, those things are very hard to have done because I know especially in New York, there are a lot of people need help, and there are a lot of not-for-profits, group homes and everything, and they get filled up very quickly. So it's not like, oh, well, I need this tonight. No. Your child may be on a waiting list for like a couple of months before they go into this. And once again, it'll only be for like a few weeks. It won't be permanent. The parents may try to say, like, let's make this a permanent thing where then the child will go into a group home or residential setting. So, I mean, it's heavily emotional. I've had to call CPS on parents. Whether people want to believe it, children can be very manipulative, and it kind of scared me about having children. It made me wait, like, listen, I have to do this right, just because you never know. So, I mean, I've had to call CPS where I knew that, like, the mom or the dad didn't do something, but just because I'm the worker, I have to call it. And I remember one time a child had me do it, and the child was just like, well, my father put me on punishment, and I was just really mad at that. So I made the story up that he hit me. And that's dangerous. Like, your parents could lose a job. You living in an area where it's not your house. Your tenants not your landlord, the owner could get tired of CPS always coming to the house. I mean, it's very dangerous, and that is what the child told me, and I was unsure. And then it's awkward too because like you have to tell the parent, like I'll normally tell them after, like, hey, I have to call CPS, or I called CPS because this is what happened. And then like the parents looking at you crazy, but it's like, I have to do this. I have to call CPS, whether it's real or not. For my job, for the safety of this child, I have to call. So, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of emotions. You're dealing with a lot. These are people that need help. If they were well adjusted, they would not need your help. So that is a job that you have to do. I've dealt with children who've seen, their moms being beat, and they think it's normal to beat on other people. I had like where a brother, it was two brothers. One brother saw their mom getting beat. He was really bad with it. And then the younger brother is coming into this doing, basically the older brother beat up on him. Now the kid, the younger brother, is beating up on the classmates, and the cycle is starting. This is basically because they've seen their mom be abused and they think that it's normal. And it was one woman, she came from another country, and she was just amazing. And she's coming from out of a bad relationship, and she has to put the pieces together, So in a way, us seeing the children is good too, because hey, if mom has to work or do something, there's still someone to watch this child after work. So I mean, it's very emotional, and you have good days and bad days. You have days where the child just opens up to you. I mean, you're going to bond with the children. I felt bad when some of my children had to leave, because it was like, oh, like I used to like just love going to work to see these children. And sometimes, especially like with minority children, people of other races may be like, oh, like they're bad. It's not they're bad. It's their environment, what they learn. They've learned to be tough. They've learned to be very straightforward and upfront with what they want because they have no choice. So, this is what we're dealing with, and it's very, very real, these issues. So I would say to say that if you want to do casework, social work, you have to have a love for it, because I mean the pay is not spectacular. You're not going to make $100,000 a year unless like probably you've been working in a school and you can move up. You may want to go to school for like psychology and do the social work, where you could kind of like supplement it and work your way. But I mean, it's also kind of like a thankless job. You have to be very punctual. You have to pick the children up at certain times. If your kid gets out at 3:40, you have to be waiting. Especially like with some kids, like the teachers like can't wait for the kids to go, because I mean they could be a handful. If the child has to be home a certain time, you have to bring them home because the family may need it. They may have to go somewhere. They may have to go to therapy, whatever. It's very important that you're punctual. So yeah, I left the job because it was just too much, and I had my own issues that I finally confronted after like so many years. They do say that a lot of times, if you dealt with issues in your life, you kind of want to work with people and help them, and I definitely think that that's true. And what else? I think that's basically it. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. I'll definitely answer them. This is all that's really come to my mind about my time as a social worker, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Bye.